Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me here today. I am the expert witness from the United Kingdom. I have been trained and have experience in digital forensics in the United Kingdom and in coordinating with international teams. So I am the designee from the UK that they sent over for this hearing. Thank you again for having me and then for printing out the questions to go over today. I'll just get right into it. The first question is, what are the legal challenges associated with cyber incidents involving foreign countries? How do internal laws affect e-discovery? And then what are the different international laws that influence a forensic investigation in the country? So in this case, the United Kingdom was the host country for the summit, and I'm from the United Kingdom team, as I mentioned. So some of these things are a little bit simpler for us, but I'll kind of get into it. The legal challenges of dealing in foreign countries are that their laws apply. For the allied nations that were there, the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, we have similar laws that involve investigations and the privacy of our citizens' information and what to do if that information is compromised. So we are able to coordinate a little bit with these laws that match up, not one for one, but they match up somewhat closely. For instance, the United Kingdom has data privacy laws. New Zealand and Australia have one called the Privacy Act, each their own separate. Canada is the Personal Information Protection Act. The United States has HIPAA and then other sub-data protection laws per each state and with the federal government itself. And there's also the European Union has the General Data Protection Regulations that came out recently. All these largely deal with the protection of citizens' data. And each country, if you're going to that foreign country, needs to understand that that foreign country's citizens need their data protected as well. So in protecting their data, protecting our own citizens' data, that does, make things a little more complicated, but it needs to be done in order to ensure its security. So these laws also affect, how we're going to go into systems. We're not just going to go into systems and download everything and then share it with everybody. When we go into a system to forensically investigate it, generally it's copied on a forensic copy that matches every single 0 and 1 exactly, and that information is kept secure and there's a chain of evidence involved. Each person who handles that evidence must sign off before they let it go, must sign off when they take it. This helps protect the data. And each person that signs off on it, and when you give it to somebody to sign off on, need to ensure that they understand that and that they are part of the system that's going to protect the different citizens' data and the data on that system and the evidence itself. To kind of lead into the next question involved, what are the legal challenges of accessing and retrieving electronic evidence stored on foreign soil? Assuming cloud storage is used, what procedures were followed to access and retrieve digital evidence stored in the cloud? So again, the summit was at the UK and we're at the UK team, so this one didn't involve us quite as much, but I'll kind of get into it a little bit. The legal challenges of accessing and retrieving data in foreign soil are that it's under that foreign soil nation's jurisdiction. So if I'm going into a foreign country, if I come into the United States, I can't just start investigating and downloading and making copies of things and going through it. I need to coordinate with the United States law enforcement and their teams. I need to ensure that it's okay that I'm there investigating. I need to ensure that they're okay with what I'm doing because that is their country. Same thing if the United States tried to come over to the UK, same thing would need to happen. They would need our permission to be there and investigate things. They would need our coordination. And we may try to control it to a certain extent or let the US team control it to a certain extent, just kind of depending on the circumstances. If it's in the UK, but it was a US company, maybe we'll let the US investigation team take over it more. If it's in the UK because it involved a US citizen, but it's still mainly UK, maybe the UK law enforcement will take over it more. It just kind of depends, but that coordination there needs to stay in place. And when that coordination is there, each country needs to ensure that each country's citizens' information is kept secure and that the evidence is kept secure. When it comes to cloud storage is not some kind of abstract, idea or place where data goes. You're going to store it in the cloud. A cloud storage system is just somebody else's computer system or server. So when you're dealing with cloud storage, one of the things that investigators have to be aware of and have to figure out is where is that physical computer system or physical server that is acting as that cloud storage system. If it's within your own nation, it makes things easier, but if it's in a foreign nation, then you hit those challenges that I just mentioned. You have to coordinate with other nation. You have to say, hey, we believe that evidence of a crime that affected citizens here is stored on a system in your country. Have to do the coordination, have to make sure it's okay if we go over there or if they do it themselves, if we trust them, or all these things. These agreements have to be brought out. You can't just go into the country or go to a system owned by that country and just do whatever you want to it. The coordination has to be there, the approvals have to be there. And each country needs to make sure that they are doing things securely to not mess up the other nation's investigation. So specific to the next question, specific to the UK, how did the international laws and jurisdiction influence the processes and procedures followed during the forensic investigation? Again, this was a little simpler for the United Kingdom team because the summit was in the United Kingdom, but we still had to make sure that because we were dealing with foreign nations, there are allied nations, but they're still foreign nations. You need to make sure that they had jurisdiction over their own government systems. So the UK team did not go into the US team's network area and just decide we're going to do the investigation. Each allied country did the investigation within their own network, and we all shared together. And then there were some instances where there were employees that were living in the UK that need to be investigated. The UK government did take over that, label these as UK citizens. But if they would have been US citizens, Australian citizens, that kind of thing, then those nations could have taken over at that point, as long as they coordinated with what was going on here. If they were staying in the UK, then yeah, we might try to tag along. It's going to be an investigation within our country, so that approval needs to be there. We'd probably send a team with them. In this case, it was UK citizens mainly investigated that were actually there at the summit at the time. There were IP addresses that were coming from US sites, so we let the United States know. They can kind of look into that further if they want. Sometimes that can kind of be spoofed and masked and all these things, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the attacks were all coming from the United States, or even those specific ones were. But in that instance, you let the United States know, hey, this is coming from the United States. You help the investigation in that part at least, and we kind of go from there. So the jurisdictions will depend on where the physical device, where the physical people are, and with what nation they are citizens of. So all of these things must be taken into consideration when doing this. Like I said, the UK team did not go into the US network room and just decide we're going to keep doing our investigation because it was all kind of involved with each other. Those were United States federal government systems. So the UK was going to let the United States federal government handle that in coordination with everybody so we could all solve the problem and figure out what was going on. The next question, so what conflicts arose between ethics and international laws during the forensic investigations? How did these conflicts affect the investigations, and how are the conflicts mitigated, resolved? Again, the best way to mitigate and resolve these conflicts is through coordination, communication. The biggest thing that are going to happen with ethics and international laws is, are you going into another nation's system when you shouldn't be? Are you accessing, or do you have access to a foreign nation's citizens' information? We try to avoid that as much as possible. And if we do think that we're going to need to go into another country or look at another citizen's information or any of these kinds of things, that has to be coordinated with that nation. For instance, like I mentioned the United States thing earlier, those IP addresses might come from the United States. Doesn't mean I'm going to send a team from the UK over there and say, go find this place right now. The same way there were UK citizens involved, I would hope that the US would not just send, FBI agents to go, knock on the door of UK citizens in the UK and start investigating them. Those kinds of things are coordinated between the different international teams. Now, you can get like Interpol or whatever involved sometimes to help coordinate. But in this case, each team's government was there. So each team's government was investigating their specific network and their systems, and then we kind of went from there. If there was to be any kind of conflict, or then the coordination saying, hey, we believe this is from your country, or hey, this may be your citizens, or hey, your citizens' information is now in my system, and make sure you're aware of that, keep you involved as part of the investigation. That coordination, that communication needs to be there to mitigate and resolve these kinds of ethical issues. And the ethical issues can usually be resolved simply by following the letter of the law for the different privacy acts and the different ways that we investigate to keep the evidence secure. So this one's asked specifically about the U.S. This says, what steps were taken to protect United States soil and citizens during the international investigation? Describe any risks to the country, businesses, or citizens from your investigation. So any investigation, if I'm copying a system down, has the potential to have information, personal information of different citizens. If a U.S. citizen had accessed a computer system from the U.K. for whatever reason, then there's a chance that when we copy that and when we look through it, we will see their information. There's also the risk of when you're passing evidence between people, that somewhere in that mix, it will get copied wrong or go into the wrong person's hands, or that person just won't handle it correctly, any of these kinds of things. These are all risks during investigations. And there's also the risk that, in this case, with ransomware, that we will go through, do the investigation, and all that information will be lost. We won't be able to crack it, we won't be able to find the person, and then the information that was, encrypted won't be decrypted, or it might be deleted even permanently. So these are all risks that could happen, but these are all mitigated, and we work to protect it, not just for the U.S. citizens, but for our citizens and for the other allied nations citizens, by following the chain of custody of the evidence, making sure that every person who signs off on that chain of custody used it for a specific purpose for the investigation, that they are all trustworthy, that they are all vetted, all of these different things, and that they know what to do with it and they're going to deal with it correctly. Keeping the other nations involved in coordination when dealing with their citizens' things or systems from their country is also important. So with the United States, we mentioned, hey, those IP addresses from the United States, keeping you involved, want to make sure maybe they'll check it out so they can see if those IP addresses were being spoofed. Maybe the systems in their country were taken over or being hacked into, or any number of things. That way they can figure that out and protect those businesses, protect those citizens. The investigation was done mainly team by team within each nation, but the coordination was there to ensure that we're all sharing information, all trying to resolve it together as quickly as possible, as effectively as possible, and as securely as possible. Thank you very much for having me. If there's any other questions, please let me know, and thank you very much for your time.